what it's about is combining all of our favorite bass sounds into one single place.
I know firsthand that it's daunting sometimes as a composer to find tools that set you apart from other people. That's what Bassynth does very, very well. It allows you to layer super interesting sources in a very organic way.
I might be in a really great studio one day where I have access to vintage synths and amazing bass guitarists, and we can go and run sounds through really crazy effects pedals. But then the next day I'm like with a really small keyboard trying to make music on my laptop. So we took all the sounds that we're used to hearing in the outside world and we put them into one single plugin. We only really like to make things that don't exist already. So, when it comes to layering up a 60s jazz bass with a vintage mini Moog that has the sound of someone coughing being played through a guitar amp.
I think that is really the standout feature of Bassynth, the fact that you can essentially layer, for example, a huge live brass ensemble with something like an 808 sub, which then might have a transient that's played by velocity, which means that as you press the key, both the brass and the transient of that sound will increase in volume. And then we can obviously modulate that in very interesting ways.
This is basically how we'd approach making music in the real world too, where you're always looking for, hey, what's that extra thing I can layer in with my bass? Oh, I want to add a trumpet to that and tune it down an octave. Then I want to put them all through a filter and then maybe try a guitar amp effect on it.
To create some of the sounds that are possible in Bassynth will take a very long time and very complex chains with any other instrument.
It often requires maybe like a dozen different tools, like a compressor from this company, sample library from this company, a synth plugin from another company, and you need to, one, know how to put them all together, and then two, have the time to do it when you want to use that sound.
Bassynth is quite a complex product in the fact that each voice is essentially its own synthesizer, so it's essentially 4 synthesizers in one.
And I think if we've done our job right, it should look deceptively simple. It should feel almost like a toy and be very playful.
We don't like the idea of cluttering the UI too much.
So it kind of works in the way that it has layers and it goes deeper and deeper and deeper, and you don't see those layers until you need them. Anyone could open up this instrument, play one note, move one control, and know immediately whether or not this was the sound that they were looking for or not. We also took the approach of making presets for making music, not making presets to just show off how cool of an instrument this is. Bassynth is split up into 3 different areas to focus on.
We have what we call the perform page, which is a page where even the most basic bedroom type producer can simply load up our presets and turn an XY pad, which allows you to blend and completely change the sound dynamically just by turning this one knob.
And this allows you to quickly have control over the main parameters. You can move your mod wheel on your keyboard and you can hear your sound morphing in a really large way that honestly would take so many lanes of automation for most people in their DAW that you would never usually bother. Perform view is kind of where most people would live the majority of the time. And then the design view is a place where you can dig a little deeper and start going into everything people who are used to working with synthesizers would do. You can actually see the spectrum morphing as you go between waveforms, and then you can layer that with, maybe just the transients or the plucking from an upright bass.
We have a wavetable engine with 220 custom wavetables.
If you don't know anything about wavetable synthesis, that's totally fine, because you'll never see it and you'll never need to know about it. You just know that when you move the XY in the middle of the instrument, you can hear this massive sound modulate and change like you hear on a lot of modern records. From there, we added a motion sequencer, and this is something really special for us because it adds a lot of movement to the sound. So the filter cutoff can be moving and repeating every 5 steps, and then the stereo width spreading out every bar.
We spent probably 3 or 4 months recording every analog synth under the sun that you can imagine. Stuff like huge mini Moog basses back into rooms and recording multiple mics of that. Brass sections, double bass saxophones, which are huge sounding low brass instruments. Tubas, there's a one of a kind called a bass vina, and that's an ethnic fretless bass guitar, which sounds very, very unique.
On top of that, we also have a huge collection of Foley sounds. This is a really special project for me because I actually started making music by playing electric bass. So it was really fun to get, 60s jazz basses, 60s Rickenbacker basses, Mustang basses, and sampling those. We found the best trombone player, the best vibraphone player in the country, and we had the best musicians play these instruments. And Both myself and Dan are so picky when it comes to engineering synth sounds. So we used, the best cables we could find. We used the best converters we could find, and we A/B'd so many different things just for the synth sounds. When it came to the acoustic sounds, we used one of my favorite studios in Toronto. It's an amazing space where you can record an orchestra, and one of the reasons we use them is because they also have what is probably one of the best mic collections in North America. Vintage U47s, vintage C12s, all kinds of really great ribbon microphones, and everything was recorded through vintage Neve console. We also recorded a lot of sounds to tape, and we would even print some things in parallel using really great vintage compressors, Fairchilds and 1176s, and the Shure Level Lock, which is a great distortion box. So again, it's really about taking these very rare and iconic sounds and putting them into a package that anyone can use anywhere they want.